everyone, welcome to our channel, Rebecca, Stu, and the Crew. I'm Rebecca. Today we have two different Dollar Tree DIYs using their lemon theme, and these are the two projects we'll be making. We'll go over the supplies separately just to make it a little bit easier to follow along. So we're going to be using some of these foam balls. They're like vase fillers from the party section, one of their large circular wood signs, some yellow, white, and black paint with some paint brushes. And then I will be using some antiquing wax, a paper towel, a little bit of water, and some toothpicks. I'm going to be using the Crafter's Square paint markers and a razor blade, scissors, and a pencil. I'm also going to use this little scoring tool and some hot glue. We'll definitely need some ribbon to match the sign that you make and some different greenery of your choice. We'll also need a sheet of paper and a little bit of the floral wire. And that's it for the first one. So let's get crafty. So the very first thing we're going to do is just trace our wood sign on the sheet of paper to make a template. Then we're just going to cut that out with our scissors. And we'll use it to help keep the line straight on our circle. So I'm just going to fold it in half and use that to help draw all the little pieces to the lemons. You just do a plus sign and then an X basically to get all those little pieces there. Then I drew about a ½ inch away from the edge to make it a little bit smaller. And this is going to help to make the lemon like that little rind on the outside of the lemon. So I just line it up on the line that I drew, and then I can trace around the outside to create that little border. Now we're going to cut out one of the triangles and trim that down into a smaller piece, and we'll trace around that in each section of the lemon. And down in the corner, I chose to write the word hello. You can add this or just leave it off. You could put summer. Really, there's anything you like that you'd like to put on the bottom, even welcome would work out. Then I'm going to take this scoring embossing tool from the Dollar Tree. I'm just going to kind of carve in those little lines. I wanted to have like the antiquing wax go over the top of this and these little lines to show up, just to show some division and give it a little bit of an antique look. You can skip this part if you don't want to do it. It's really up to you. But all I'm doing is taking the rounded edge. There's like a little ball on the end and just kind of carving into the wood. The wood signs at Dollar Tree are pretty soft wood, so it's really easy to do this, and you're able to just like put those little grooves in there. So then I did some little lines to look like the pieces of the lemon. And that's all I did there. So now we're going to go ahead and start painting it. So to start out, we're just going to take some white paint and we're going to do all the way around the circle, and then we'll do in between each piece of the lemon. The little grooves in the wood also help you to be able to see once you paint over it where the lines are to help you keep those little triangles even. So I just went around the outside with some yellow paint. I mixed the yellow with just a tad bit of white to make it a little bit lighter to do all of the triangles, being careful to make sure that I left those little white lines in between each section. And it did just take the one coat of paint to cover this. So once we have all of the yellow painted in, I mixed white paint with just a little dab of yellow to do a really pale yellow and did around that line around the outside there. Then I went over the hello with the little embossing tool just to make sure I could still see it. And then taking the Dollar Tree paint markers, you can draw the little lines that look like the pulp in the center. And then I use the black paint marker to do the word hello. If you don't have paint markers, you can just use paint. I have paint markers, so it's just a little bit easier just to draw it on. It's a little bit more of a steady hand for me, so that's why I chose to do mine this way. So now that that's mostly dry, I took some antiquing wax and mixed it with some water, and I'm just going to brush that over the top of all of the little grooves that we did with the embossing tool. Once I have it all the way covered, I just take a paper towel, I dip it in a tiny little bit of water, and then just rub off the excess, because I really just want that darker color down in the grooves to help them stand out and give it a little bit more detail. Now we'll just set this aside and let it finish drying all of the way. And then I took the toothpicks and I put the little foam balls on the toothpick to help hold it while I paint it, so I could paint all the way around. So we're basically taking these foam balls and we want to make them look like they're a wooden bead. So that's why we're painting them black. If you like the yellow, because it does match, you could maybe alternate. You could do the black and then yellow. And I just stick those in the foam to let those dry. You could do the black and the yellow. You could do all yellow, or the black. You could do black, white, and yellow. That would be cute as well. So now we're going to go ahead and just make a bow. So just cut some strips of ribbon about, I want to say they're about 4 or 5 inches long. And I did solid black, the polka dots with the white, and then yellow. All of those were found at the Dollar Tree. I just continued the X pattern and layer them, and then take a piece of twine to tie these together in the center. If you don't have twine, just use another piece of the ribbon to tie that together in the center. And you do want to double knot it and make sure you have it pulled tight. If you wish, on the end, you could do the dovetail, which is where you just take the little notch out of the ends. You could also singe the ends with the lighter to help keep them from fraying. It's really up to you either way. So once I have it tied securely, I'm just going to nip off the little ends of the excess twine. I'm not going to need that to attach it. And I did the little dovetails you could see there on the ends. So now that the little beads have dried, I'm just going to slide those on a piece of floral wire. And I did 12 of the medium size foam beads. And actually, if you take the toothpick and poke it all the way through the bead, it helps to get it on the wire a little easier. So then I took my craft knife and I just poked a hole right through the wood to create a hole for the wire to go through. And I just popped that all the way through the side and then bent the wire up. And then on this side, as you can see, I'm just using, it's like a razor blade or an X-Acto knife. And you just need to pop a little hole there to get the wire through. And then I push those through the front. And then I bent the wire over on the back. I cut down any excess and then just put a little dot of hot glue to help hold the ends down. This just creates a little beaded type hanger at the top. You'll want to adjust the wire to make sure it looks nice and even. Now that that's done, I just took a little bit of greenery from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to put a little bit on either side of the bottom of the beads here, and then take that bow that we made. We're going to stick that right in the center. And then I took a little bit more greenery and added some more underneath of the pieces of ribbon, and then one more small piece right to the center of the bow. And that's our first one completed. I hope you enjoyed. I love how this turned out. I think it looks so summery and ready to go. So now for number 2, we'll go over the supplies for this one. We're just going to use one of these vines. They come rolled up in a little roll from Dollar Tree. We'll use some floral moss, some more of the Dollar Tree ribbon. I'm going to use the burlap with the chevron. We'll need an X-Acto knife or a razor blade and one of their wall hanging vases. We'll also need some of their floral foam and the lemons. They come in these bags of 3. They also have limes. You could do limes if you like instead. We'll need some painter's tape or masking tape, and one of these little chalkboard wood stakes. We're going to use the Dollar Tree paint markers again, the yellow, white, and black paint. We'll need some more hot glue as well. So let's get crafty making project number 2. So the first thing I'm going to do is just take masking tape. It's just a little bit thinner than the painter's tape that I had. Either one will work. We're just going to create these little stripes here. So this tape is about 1 inch wide. So that's the size that I use. You can use smaller to get more stripes if you like, but I thought that was a good size. So I just push it down really well, making sure I have a tight seal around the edges. So I take another piece of tape and I put it right underneath of that. That's going to be our spacer. And then we just take another piece of tape and stick that down below, and then we'll pull off the piece that's working to leave a space between the 2 pieces there. And then just go all the way to the bottom. It ended up being 3 pieces of tape, and then paint it with the black chalk paint from the Dollar Tree. I'm using the Waverly brand just because that's what I have, but the chalk paint from Dollar Tree would work just the same. So I did the first coat, and then I did let it dry. I actually used a hair dryer to dry it, and then I applied a second coat. And just to speed the process up a little bit, I used a hair dryer to dry mine just so I could get the video finished. So once I have the paint dried all the way, then I just peel off that masking tape. And I have nice crisp lines there, which is exactly what I wanted. And now we're going to put more tape on, but in the opposite direction. So we're going to make vertical stripes with the painter's tape and then cover the black stripes with painter's tape to protect it. As you can see, the black stripes are all covered up there. So I first started with just some yellow paint, just a bright yellow acrylic paint. And then I dried that. I'm going to do a second coat, and it was a little bit too dark of a yellow for me. So after the second coat, I ended up taking that same color yellow, which is called bright yellow, and I mixed a little bit of white chalk paint with it, and then that seemed to be a better color. I just liked the way it looked a little bit better. To this one, the yellow here is actually 3 coats, just because without the chalk paint added in with it, I could still see the metal below it. I do want the metal to show, which is why I taped it the way I did. So once it's dry, you just want to remove the tape again. And then using that paint marker, I wrote lemons and drew like little flowers on the edges and wrote 10 cents each. And I used those little squares that the paint created with the tape to use almost as like a template of where the letters would go to make them the same size. So if the letter fit in the box, then that was the right size to make it. And then they all were pretty uniform that way. I just drew little flowers on the edge and then wrote the 10 cents each and drew some little flower shapes as well at the bottom. So I let that dry all the way because I didn't want to smudge it at all. And then once it was dry, I just cut the floral foam down and packed that down inside of the wall vase planter here. You can glue this down if you want to. I didn't find it necessary. Then take some of the Spanish moss. I actually had these moss stones, so I'm going to use those just because it was a little bit less messy, but either one will work. So I just glued the stones over top of the foam just to hide it so you wouldn't be able to see it, just because the vines don't completely cover the craft foam. If someone was walking by, I didn't want to see the craft foam down below. I just wanted the moss to cover that whole area. So once I had all of those glued down into place, then we went ahead and started adding the vines next, which is a little bit easier than I thought it would be. I wasn't quite sure. It doesn't have a nice piece of wire in it, so I wasn't sure how it would bend, but it actually bent pretty well. So I just took some hot glue and put it on the vine. I did cut it down into a few different pieces, and then I just shoved that down into the craft foam, and you can use a popsicle stick or a dowel rod or something to help push it down inside if it's not going down easy enough for you. So then once I have it down in there, to help hold the vine in place where I wanted it, I just add up little dots of hot glue around it, and then I could put it in the spots that I wanted it to stay. Now at the bottom of the vine, you do want that little stick part that looks like wood. You want that to be empty without little leaves on it, and that's going to help us to put the lemons on to make it look like the lemons are growing out of this little planter here. So I just continued to add the vines until I thought I had enough, and I liked the way that it looked like it was growing up around the edges. And taking those Dollar Tree lemons, you're just going to take your craft knife and poke a little X in the bottom of it, and then take your hot glue and stick it right down inside that hole and give it a few squirts of the hot glue. It will start to bubble out just a little bit. That's okay. You're not going to see that. Then you're just going to take the end of that vine and start sliding it down into the lemon as far as you can get it to push in. That way it has a nice seal into the hot glue. And now it looks like we have lemons growing out of our little planter. I just thought that was so cute. And I did a few, I think I did 3 altogether. These lemons I had were actually from, you know how they sell them separately? You can get like apples, limes, lemons, pears, and things like that. So they were a little bit larger than the ones that come 3 to a bag. If I had used the ones that come 3 to a bag, it would have been a little bit easier to add a few more. But I decided to use these just because they were already opened up. I just wipe the excess glue off the edge if I think it's a little bit too much. And then I added some extra leaves right to the edges just to make sure you couldn't see where I had poked a hole into the top of the lemon. Now I'm just going to take that burlap ribbon from the Dollar Tree and some yellow ribbon, and doing the same thing. We're just going to create an X pattern and just keep layering the different colors, alternating them. And then once we have all of the layers done, we're just going to take another piece of twine, or you can take another piece of ribbon and then tie it off in the center, just like we did for the last ribbon that we made, or the last bow. This is a very simple, easy way to make a bow. It really looks nice and it's full. You can fluff it out a little bit. I did dovetail the ends of the bow here before I put it all together. You just want to adjust them so there you can see all the different layers. Then I attached that with some hot glue right to the edge of the planter at the top. Then I took one of these little chalkboard wood stakes. I wrote Farm Fresh and added the flowers to either side, and then just popped that right in the center. So that's optional. You don't have to do that part if you don't like. So these are both of the projects finished. I hope you enjoyed them. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I do DIY videos using mainly Dollar Tree items every single Thursday. So these are just a few of the ones that we've done over the last month and a half or so. Some of them are Dollar Tree videos as well as review of the products that Dollar Tree sells. And I do What's New at Dollar Tree videos every Friday. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. And here are the other videos from our channel you might also enjoy. Have a great day, everyone.